very close to an energetic gate which carries an astonishing energy of love and truth, which will no longer be denied on this planet.
Welcome back to True Reality TV, Inside LoveHasWon, episode 15, I feel. So, we get back to the mainland after the chaos of Hawaii. And it was just such an interesting experience, I think, for me personally, and I know for like those of us that were there. It was just such an interesting experience. And it was also, like I said, it was heartbreaking because I understand all the sides of it, right? I understand their perspective. I understand all that, but it was also just really, again, very sad to see that the way people treat other people because of something that they said that they didn't like, or because the way someone else is living their life is not the way you would live your life. Or, it was really eye-opening, I think, for me to just experience that and see it from all the angles, right? To see it from all sides and to understand the consciousness that was at play and all of that. But, things like, besides all of that went down, things like the Airbnb never returned our funds for the entire month that was paid for, in which she spent like 4 days of. And, that was a significant amount of funds that was really important for us as a mission. And yeah, they never gave it back. The landlord refused. And yeah, so pretty much it was like, okay, it was another example of where I feel the ego always wins. And they don't, right? Like the whole concept is love has won. Love has won. It has already won. But to firsthand experience and kind of just witness the way that the ego will treat love, and just another example of just the way this matrix is designed, and it was sad all the way around. It was not a fun experience. But as Mom would say, we send them love anyway. And we move along. And so at this point, we're in the Denver area. And this is water for all the people who are going to be like, oh my God, what is she drinking? It's sparkling water. So we're in the Denver area, and then we end up going to... We were in Evergreen for a short period of time, and then we were in Breckenridge for another short period of time. And Mom's pain is continuing to accelerate. Also, the fact that basically since, I would say, when I mentioned back in 2018, when Mom was in Oregon and she first received the information that she was starting to take on collective density, planetary density. From then is when the decline in the pain really, really, really began and never stopped. Now, on top of this, I would say beginning in like the end of 2019, right, when she started releasing disclosure energy etherically, to prepare for the disclosure waves that would be coming in 2020 and then 2021 and etc. She also began to have to process all of the trauma she had experienced in her life, in this present day life. She had done so much of the clearing of timelines, so much of the collective and humanities processing. But now it was starting to be like she had to go through a huge process of really like transmuting her own personal trauma of everything she'd experienced in her life. And so this was a lot of these times, especially in 2020, is mom was telling us all of her stories. She always was telling her stories. That was kind of her way of teaching. She was a storyteller. But she started telling us more and more very in-depth, detailed stories that we had never even heard before about all the things that she had experienced, which again, we can't share all of it. There's just too much. But now at this point, she is preparing for her ascension. Okay. And that is what she made clear. Now, again, we don't know what her ascension would look like. Right? We don't know exactly what that entails. Is that you getting beamed up on a starship? It's possible. Does that look like death? What does that look like? We don't know, nor did mom ever tell us verbally, but she did prepare us in the way of like, whatever happens, this is my wish. Okay. So we had that. We had the thing of, don't ever take me to a hospital. Don't resuscitate me. Basically, do not try to keep me here in pain. I'm going home, however that looks, and these are my wishes. Okay, so that's all that we had. And so at this point, into like October of 2020, mom is preparing for her ascension. Like I said, we don't know what this looks like, but this is what she's telling us. I'm preparing to ascend. I am wrapping up whatever I need to wrap up here before I complete this. And so at this time, she goes and stays in this house. I can't even remember the area that it was in, but and some of the team is with her. Hope and I go back to the hub because we had the hub, we had Mission House, we had a lot of team members at this time, and mom's going through a lot, so we need to help kind of manage everything else that's going on, make sure we're keeping with our consistencies, the sessions, the live streams, all of the disciplines that mom taught us. You always stay consistent with that no matter what. We were still doing the products, etc. So we go back to the hub because we know that there's stuff we need to like make sure is getting taken care of. Now in the end of October time, mom, the Galactics mom decide that she needs to be near water. This was this was one of the reasons for Hawaii as well, is the water was very healing for her, to be near the water, to be able to consciously interact with the water. This was really important for her. So they decide to need to get her by the water. So she ends up going and living on a houseboat for like 30 days with some of the team members. God, what a crazy time that was. A lot of stories from the boat. But mom was enjoying the water. She was performing a lot of ceremonies, and this was specifically in the Lake Shasta area of California. And so she's on this houseboat for like 30 days. She's doing all these ceremonies for the waters. She's clearing a bunch of things, and she's also preparing for her ascension. So part of this was she was releasing what was called the Ascension protocols. Those were coming out in waves. She was also activating all of the angel chips at this time. So remember, mom had re-begun the etheric surgeries back in January of 2020. And this was following up the work she had started in 2014. And so she had identified all of these etheric, energetic implants that she was finding, right? And she had found more in 2020. Those were part of her clearing. And then basically every person who signed up to do a surgery with her, Mom was able to go into that whole collective, like whatever area that person lived in, whatever country, and help to clear whatever was interfering with that population as well. So by the time of this, like November time of 2020, Mom was like, I've completed 8 billion surgeries. I've completed basically doing a surgery on as many consciousnesses on the planet as I possibly can to help humanity awaken. And she had identified as well that yes, there was going to be these negative implants, these interference energies that were happening, but there was also what she referred to as angel chips, which were basically codes within our DNA, right? Many people have heard about the fact that there's a lot dormant that lies in the DNA. And this was one of those things that we all had cosmic coding, our higher self codes, these chips that were holding, the God DNA. So she was starting to activate those within the collective. Basically doing as much as she could to wrap up anything that she could do before she was ready to go. And so about this time, then they're on the boat for about 30 days and they get off the boat and she's back staying in Mount Shasta because Mom had placed a lot of energy in Mount Shasta. Okay. So there's like a lot of energy there. There's portals there that she was working with. She laid a lot of energy there. So she's working with all of the energy that she had previously laid there. And this was in December of 2020. And she started the process of what she called unplugging in December of 2020, which was basically she was unplugging from the third dimensional plane. She was removing her essence from this plane, so to speak. And by this time, Mom is in way too much pain and is processing way too much energy where she's not on the live streams really. She can't even be on her phone at this point. So she can only kind of look at her phone a few times a day. Normally, she was always on the phone. She would answer every message she ever received. She was always in the chats, like giving people updates and telling everyone she loves them and sharing music. And at this point, she was unplugging. So she couldn't even really be on the phone anymore. It started to become such an overwhelm for her and an interference. So she's unplugging. She's removing her essence slowly but surely from this plane. Now, when we get to, let's say, like January of 2021, February of 2021. At this point, Mom actually goes and stays at this house in Mount Shasta that she had stayed at back in 2015. And she did a huge Lemurian portal ceremony there. And she wanted to return to that house because she's like, I know I've left something there for myself to complete. So she's staying there. And at this point, the Lulu energies are becoming too much, I feel, from my experience. It was becoming too much for Jason to transform. Like I said, there were many moments where he held the father energies and he held it long enough for Mom to be able to anchor in that blueprint to complete what she needed to complete, but he couldn't hold it. Whether that was by choice, he was choosing the lower, whether it was too much for him, I don't know. But he was not, he never fully transformed it. It was like he couldn't hold the higher embodiment. He would hold it for a few days, sometimes a few weeks. There were moments where it could be a month or two. But it's getting worse now. It's getting that mom's getting more sensitive, and so it's becoming more detrimental. And so at this point, mom just like, I want you out of my field. Like, I just can't do this anymore. It's just, she's in too much pain. She is trying to do so many things before she knows she's done. And she doesn't want to fucking deal with this anymore. It's been years now of dealing with this. You've had more than enough time. Now, with that being said, the team wasn't perfect either. We were getting roasted all the time by the Galactics because we couldn't hold it either. Because the level of divinity that mom embodied, the level of consciousness is like beyond our comprehension. So you have to imagine when you're in that state of consciousness and then you're watching the level of dysfunction and unconsciousness around you, it's like two different worlds. And that's what started to happen, is it was just like everything mom saw around her, whether it was Jason or the team, was just like, it was too 3D for her. It was like, she saw the dysfunction, she saw the ego, but at the same time, I know in my heart that mom trained us knowing that it was going to take us years to work through the ego programmed mind. You know, mom's journey of her embodying that full essence with no ego took 14 years. And that's not even including all the years before that where she was downloading and getting codes and all of that. That was just her on physical mission. So you can bet your bottom dollar that it was going to take us way longer. But mom, in a way, it was like she catapulted us light years ahead consciously of what we could have accomplished on our own in 10, 15, 20 years. We got in 3 years. And mom used to always say, like, we're back from the future. You know, we're back from the future, correcting the past. And there was a book that I read that was a big part of my awakening, right before I found LoveHasWon. And it was a book called Letters from 500. I don't even know how I found this book. I forget the author's name, but I do think it's still available out there. And he basically has this experience where his future self contacts him telepathically and starts bringing him through visions and almost like astral traveling 500 years into the future to show him what New Earth was like, and is basically communicating with himself in the past to document all of this, to share it in a book form. And he said, we're experimenting currently, 500 years in the future, we're experimenting right now with contacting our past selves, transmitting this information to see if it will correct or change the timeline, because he explains to his past self, who's living in this day and age, that humanity was about to go through what was known as the Great Storm. And that's what he actually called it in the book. And the guy 500 years in the future says, in our history books, we call this period of time for you the Great Storm, where there is chaos and there is destruction because of humanity's awakening and ultimately the ascension process. He talked about how they have no ego in the fifth dimension. Half of this book is the future self basically telling this guy how much ego he has. So when mom said that, that clicked for me, because that book brought a lot of awareness to me in like, this is what we're doing. And so, yeah, I believe the Hail Mary of this was mom and all of us coming from the future to this present moment and basically speeding up the timeline exponentially. We were catapulted into, like I said, I think the amount of transformation and wisdom and experience I gained from those 3 years, I could not have developed in an entire lifetime. I just couldn't. The level of training, the level of precision that this woman had, I've never in my life seen before, and I will never encounter it again. And so, Jason leaves the field for a while, and a lot of the other team was staying in the area around Mount Shasta, in case mom needed anything, support. They do help do groceries and things like that, so whoever's staying directly with mom doesn't have to keep leaving the house over and over, because she doesn't sleep. So she needs someone there with her all the time for care purposes. She can't walk. She has to be carried to the shower. She has to be carried to the bathroom, right? All of these things. So he goes and stays for a little while with the team who's in the area. We're in Colorado still, doing the same things we've been doing. And so between January and March of 2021, we're kind of in this feeling now. And like I said before, at this point, we don't really know what the end game is here. We know that mom is saying she's getting ready to ascend and complete her mission. And she had always told us, once I complete my mission and I go back home, your mission is just beginning. So we, on some level, were prepared that she completed her contract. This is what she came to do. Now, we have to complete our contracts, but we don't know what any of this looks like. And so, we're just staying in the present moment, like taking one step at a time as best we can, not jumping into the future, because you have to stay present. So at this time is when, after 14 years, mom had saved up enough, and we had all contributed to saving up enough to buy land and have a community. And that was mom's dream. We wanted to be able to invite everybody to come and form a community, have a crystal school, build a garden, like live off the land kind of thing. Like, we love that. Be in service to the community however we can, be in service to other people however we can. That was the dream. So around this time, actually, we're actively searching for land and like almost preparing to possibly like get some and like start this community. And so we're like, okay, maybe once we do that, like mom will be able to have stability and stay in one location, because she was always having to keep moving because the energies would catch up, so to speak. And of course, at this point, it's increasing the amount of times that people are trolling, calling the cops on mom, wellness checks, etc. And mom is not, she's ahead of it. She doesn't want any of that shit. And everybody who obviously has a lot of opinions and a lot of things about what we should have done and blah, blah, blah. And I know everybody wants to use this one clip of me on a live stream one time saying, oh, mom wanted to go to a hospital. And we were like, no, that's probably not a good idea. She said that in jest. At this point, if people had followed us enough, you would know mom has the final say in everything. If she had said, the Galactics are saying, I need to go there. I need to go to a hospital. This is the directive. This is what we're doing. We would have done that. Absolutely. She gets the final say. It's her decision. But the one time she ever said it was like in jest of like, well, maybe should I just go? And we were like, no. Like that. And then of course, it's not up to us. Our opinion in the mind doesn't matter. Never had. Everyone on that team respected mom's decisions and would do whatever she decided to do, period. So to answer that question, it was always no. And she also would know ahead of time, the Galactics would tell her when someone was about to call the cops on a wellness check, and she would get the guidance and she would say, I have to move locations. So if that woman wanted to, she would have. Okay? She was ahead of it. She actively did. Mom does not trust the ego-programmed mind. And unfortunately, all of our systems, including the medical system, are infected with the ego-programmed mind. So she wasn't going to trust that. And so at this point, she is getting worse. I mean, we know that, we can see that. Again, we're just doing the best we can in the moment of like, what can we do? And again, our track at the time was, let's get some land, let's have a community, let's have a place where mom can be stable. And she doesn't have to keep moving around and like getting a rental place or getting a hotel or doing this or doing that. Like for any normal person, that is too much. For the state that she was in, that is absurd to put her through that. But everyone blames us for all of it. But let me just say this. Mom wouldn't have had to keep jumping around from place to place if the trolls and the people coming from her from the outside didn't put her on the run. She didn't want your interference. She didn't ask for it. Mom was on the phone up until that point before I said she started to get off every day. She would be on the live. She would be in the chats. She would say what she wanted if that's what she wanted. So the level of interference, and this is where everyone wants to blame us, fine. We will take full accountability because that's what mom taught us to do. But we all know we honored her wishes in 100% integrity. All of us will stand up tall with our head held high. We followed her wishes 100% in integrity, whether you like it or not. And she had to keep moving around because of that. And that was obviously not ideal for her. So we were like, okay, we can get some place that's stable and she won't have to move around. And so this was the next track that we were on in those moments, knowing that she's getting worse, knowing that she doesn't want to keep moving around, but knowing what we're also dealing with from the outside. So around, I think the March time, this is when mom says the Galactics are saying that I need to get to Oregon. Now she's in Shasta at the time. Now again, Jason had gone in and out of her field. She was just done with dealing with him at that point. And there was a moment where he comes back to the house in Shasta when he was staying with the team at the time. He shows up back at the house in Shasta, and mom, and he says it in the doc. He takes full accountability for it, and he says, yeah, I killed her energetically. That's true. Now, it's not personal to him, but it is and it isn't. Because as mom had said a million times on live stream, in the chats, to anyone who would listen, she said, humanity killed me. Humanity killed me. The ego killed me. So she's speaking to all of you because nobody found her. You didn't show up. You didn't find her. So as much as, we bared the brunt of a lot of this, we showed up. And we showed up as representatives of humanity to do the absolute best we possibly could for this ascension. We gave it our heart and soul, all of it. And she would always say that. She said, humanity killed me because they didn't choose me. They didn't love me. They didn't see me. They didn't show up for me. So, who's to blame? And so he knows, he said it in the doc. And so I think at that point, Mom knew this is kind of the end of it, right? Like the density was going to be too much for her. And at that time she was ready. She was ready. She completed everything she could possibly complete. There was not a single other energetic work that she could do, physical or energetic. She had done it all 1,000,000 times more. And so now they're like, okay, we've got to move her to Oregon. And this was a stressful time because, we don't want her to keep having to move around, and we don't really know what's going to happen next. And we're trying to manage all these different things. And so they go with her to Oregon. Jason, there's a few others with her, and they go to Oregon and they're staying at a hotel. This is like by like the end of March maybe or something like that. And she's just declining. Like there's no other way to say it. Like she, it's just obvious that this is her ascension. This is what it looks like. This is what, and so, yeah, she looked the way she looked. And again, I know everybody has a lot of things to say about the colloidal, and I'll just make this clear that, yeah, Mom drank a good amount, but it wasn't like crazy. Like she's not chugging a gallon a day, and it was her decision. She said that was one of the few things that was actually keeping her fairly healthy because of like everything else she was experiencing. So it was her choice. That's what she wanted. She said, this is what the galactics are guiding me. This is one of my medicines. And that's that. Again, Mom always knew nothing was going to heal her down here, but this was a tool for her. This was a part of her medicine. Take it or leave it. That was her decision. And, I don't know if I can legally say something, but I will just say this. The autopsy did not show what you would think that it would show from the 3D mind's perspective of what all the assumptions were of her cause of death. None of that was listed. I don't know. To our awareness, and from the documents that we have seen, there was no cause listed. So, I don't know. Just saying. Anywho, so they take her to a hotel. She's obviously not doing well, right? And so there was a moment where I was on the phone with them at one point, and this was like early April or second week of April, and I just knew. Again, sometimes I just know things, and I have this strong feeling, and I just knew of like, it's time. It's time. And I remember telling Hope, this is what I feel. I feel we need to go out there because it's time. And she was like, okay. And then we immediately got like a bunch of syncs and confirms. And then, she was like, okay, yeah, we got to go. So we booked a flight. We didn't even tell anybody. We didn't even tell her, Jason, nobody, because at this point, like normally for a decision like that, we're going to wait for her directive, but it was just something we knew, we just knew. And so we fly out there, and I think that as soon as we arrived, she knew that we knew it's just kind of this telepathic exchange. Again, by this point, she had been pulling her essence out of this plane for months, preparing herself. She was ready. This is what she wanted. But she wanted to do it in a way where she could be at peace, not with everyone from the egos telling her what she should be doing and what we should be doing. And this was what she wanted. She wanted to go in peace, in a safe space, with people she loved who loved her. That's it. And a lot of cultures do that. It's not... I think there's this very Americanized thing where I think there's a big fear of death here. I'm sure everyone around the world shares in that, but I just mean there's a lot of cultures who don't treat death the way that we do, I think it's become, we have such a fear of it, and then it's become this very detached, cold experience where, I don't know, just laying in a hospital room, like tied to a bunch of things, like, I don't know, like, I think we're so afraid of the natural process of it that it's become this sterile, just environment in which people pass over. And I'm not saying it's bad. It's not bad to do that. Things happen. And I think that hospitals are still very useful for people that need them. Like, there's nothing wrong with it. I'm just saying from my experience and just what I've observed is like that death can be something else. Like if we face the fear of it, we can actually just see it as the sacred passing that it is. And I think more people who do pass, it's a piece for them to do it in an environment that they feel safe in, that they feel comfortable in, with people that they love, At least that's just how we saw it. That's how Mom saw it. I can't speak for everybody. I'm just sharing that's what Mom wanted. And so that's what we did. And I think when we showed up, like I said, like she knew that we knew and she couldn't communicate a lot at that time. Like she was still talking and speaking, but it was very minimal. It was all very telepathic. And we just allowed her natural process. And we were with her and we cared for her and did the best we could with our limited experience of this to allow her to pass in total peace. And yeah, everybody can have the judgments. It's cool. It's fine. But I feel that we did the best we could with what we were prepared for and unprepared for at the time. And then at that point, it was pretty crazy because we were like getting all of these like crazy experiences. And like we said in the doc, like, which was the absolute truth, which was she was not displaying, I guess, what the typical symptoms would be for someone that's passed. Like her body was not displaying that. And so it was kind of confusing for us because we could feel the essence had left, but the body was not showing that. And we could still pick up like this very faint heartbeat and things like that. And then obviously like we had this situation where people at the hotel were freaking out, obviously. And we had these like men in black suits show up and basically like be like, you know, what's going on and all this stuff. So we're just like, we have to take her somewhere. Maybe she's not fully passed yet. She needs some more time to pull. This is a huge essence. She just needs time to pull it all out, right? To just allow her to do that. And so, yeah, everything in the doc about that story, you know, it's all true. And, you know, we went to a national forest. And at that time, what we were going to do was to choose a little plot of land and to bury her there and have a ceremony for her there. And so that was the plan. We were like looking around in the area, plots, things like that, and wanted to set up like a little memorial thing for her, whatever. And then something changed. And again, it's really challenging to navigate this story because there's so much to it. But I feel that once Mom left, I will give Jason credit, as I did in the doc, that he held it down really well in those moments to keep us all calm. But very quickly after that, I feel probably the grief set in, probably also the confusion, because again, like we were just following Mom's wishes, but there was no plan. There was no plan for this. We never had any idea how it was going to look, when it was going to happen. We just knew these were her wishes, and to honor that's all that we knew. So we were just trusting this process. And I think for him, it was probably very challenging because he's honoring what Mom has asked too, but he doesn't know what's going on. I think the grief set in, and I also feel that at that point, it was probably very challenging for him to hold that higher embodiment because Mom was doing most of that work for him to keep him in that higher state. And so, yeah, we had differences. We had very different perspectives at that time on how to proceed. And I think he knew that. I think he knew that we had different ideas about how this should go. And yeah, a bunch of us went out that day. We had to do laundry. We were looking at land, like I said, like, you know, figuring this all out and what is going on. And yeah, we come back to the campground and they're gone. And we wouldn't find out till about 24 hours later that they were heading, you know, to Crestone. Now, could that have been true guidance? Possibly. I don't pretend to know, you know, what the Galactics and what Mom wanted at that point. I think a part of me was like, we could have done this differently, but at the same time, he was following what he believed is his guidance from her. Okay, what can I say? And, you know, on one level, I thought maybe Mom would want to be laid to rest at her home in Crestone, where she had spent the majority of her mission. That house was very meaningful to her. She had put so much energy there. She had spent so much time there. Maybe she did want to rest there, you know? You know, Crestone is also an interesting place where I believe they're the only place in the country who still does like burning cremations or something like that. Like they have something where it's ceremonial and you do like a cremation and fire. And I believe they're the only place in the country that does that. And because a lot of people there do practice these kind of different cultural and religious practices. So it's, you know, that's why Crestone's a little bit weird, but they do kind of allow for that religious type of freedom and those different types of like ceremonies and things. So it was like, okay, well, then maybe that's where she wants to be. So the plan was that the rest of us were going to pack up everything that was in California at the time And we were going to go back to our home in Crestone because that home was given to us by Jim, the landlord. So that was the home that we knew. That was the home that this entire team, this is the place where we resided. And so, all this stuff that transpired after that, we don't know exactly what went on because we weren't there. But it all went down the way that it did. And so I vividly remember that we were on the road as a bunch of us, and I was on the phone with him, or I was texting with him, and I just remember getting the message. It was like really late at night, and he was like, the cops are here. And I was like, here we go. And in that moment, I just I remember we were sitting in the car and I was just staring out the window, kind of just like, okay, what are we going to do? And so, yeah, they were all arrested. As we later find out, Miguel cleans out all the bank accounts, every dollar that everyone had contributed, and Mom mostly, had contributed to these funds that were to be put to a community. And her dream of the crystal schools and all the things that we just months prior were in the process of executing. Takes it all. And now Mission House is basically on lockdown. Nobody's allowed to be there but him because it was in his name. And so now we've got like 15, 18 team members. Like we got 7 of them in jail, and the rest, we have now no funds, nowhere to live, no place to go. And yeah, what a time that was. And of course, the media stuff is hitting now. Everything's getting crazy. It's just insanity. And so at this point, George, who had been with us, he's up in Vermont at one of our dear friends' houses who loves Mom, and we had met before. And funny enough, she said that 2 months before this all went down, she got the guidance from the Galactics to prepare her home for the team, and she did not know why. And so we have nowhere to go. We end up getting in contact with them, and they're like, come here. And so there was no other option for us. There literally was no other option. And I also believe that Mom set that up for us because maybe at that point she could see what was going to happen with the other stuff because of the choices that people made. So we go cross country all the way to Vermont, and we're trying to process all of this. I can't explain it. I can't describe it. Just the overwhelm of all of it was just too much to bear in many moments. But Mom always taught us to just keep going. So we just kept going the best that we could. We had to do a new website, new everything, start from scratch. And we all just slept on the floor for a long time while we're trying to get ourselves back together. And this is when we start getting contacted by a bunch of different news people, media people, outlets. And so this is when HBO kind of comes into the mix. And then the rest is kind of history. We just felt like Mom had set it up that way, so we surrendered to it. We went with it. We didn't know how it was going to work out. There's different feelings about it, but ultimately I just trust that Mom set it up, and I trust her plan. I trust the divine plan more than I trust any ego on this planet. So however it went, however it goes, I trust that. yeah, now, it's the mission continues. The story continues because now it's about all of our awakening stories. It's about our journeys back to full consciousness, back to true reality, back to New Earth. And so the story's not done. It will never be done. It's just now unfolding individually and collectively. But I wanted to leave off with a few messages from Mom that were from over the years, but I just wanted to end with these.
I give eternal gratefulness and greatness to Master Robin and Jermaine, two masters who have been by my side for many years now as we make our transition through this ascension process. Crayola is here, Crayon. Many others have joined, including my daddy, and Ken, and Wayne Dyer, Dean Wilder, Lollipops, and I really call it Lollipops. Dolores Cannon, she's here. Ebodo, he's what a beautiful being. And his experiments in all of this. Thank you all. So grateful for all they've experienced and their experiments here on Earth, and able to share them with me. And that is so grand. They're here. 1212, 93%. Interesting moment as I look up. Robin and Jermaine, my best friends, as we walked through the darkness to gather Father God, bring him home into the light. Lucifer, he's home now. Yippee!
And yes, as Mom said, she brought him home. We have a lot of love for everyone who's been on this team, even the ones who made decisions we don't agree with. It is what it is, as Mom would say. You just forgive and you move forward. We're all going to have different paths and journeys. And I think that many who were with Mom, we all do have different paths and journeys. We're all going to always have that bond, and we respect each other. I respect everybody who made it to mission, no matter what the outcome was and no matter what they ultimately decided and chose to do. That's none of my business. That's between them and Mom. But everything comes full circle in the end. I will say that. I believe that wholeheartedly. Because Mom forgives everything. So this is all just a cosmic drama that plays out through consciousness, and everything will come full circle in the end, always. And I will leave off with a message Mom has for her atoms.
Robert's like, what'd you say? I'm not saying nothing. Not saying nothing about something going on. That way, it'll drive the fucking atoms nuts. What's happening? And the truth is, only I know. Ain't that some shit? Boop-a-doop-doop-doo. God sneaks through the back door of McDonald's. Creates a new paradigm. Nobody knows. Some people, 50% increases. Everybody's so drawn to the energy. I was like, this is fucking amazing. I was floating on air in McDonald's. Then I had to leave it to co-create heaven on earth and bring forth the macro of what I produced in the micro. It's fucking genius and brilliant, and you guys, you better fucking speak up. Voice your love for yourselves, for God equal love equal truth. Now, Leah Emile was my first name. They called me. I was like, what? Leah Emile. Love in action. Leah, God of the people, or bringing the gospel of truth. Emile, God of the people. Hello!
And yes, Mom always said that her journey is unique. It will never be replicated. But we will all still walk that path too. But it will be different for us. But we must stand in our truth. We must speak truth without fear. We must be transparent without fear. We must be authentic without fear. Because that is what true reality is. And the more of us that do that, the more the ego program mind dissolves. And we all remember that we're all one and that we're all here for the same purpose. So if we all work together, if we drop the ego mind and we start getting into here, that's what will bring us through this ascension process. And those who can't get out of the mind and can't get into the heart, they'll take themselves out. But for the rest of us, we're moving forward. So I love you all. Thank you for listening and for watching. And we will be back with some more personal stories.
We are very close to an energetic gate which carries an astonishing energy of love and truth, which will no longer be denied on this earth.